Hello friends, for today's video I am going to be going through all of my favorite books that I picked up within the first quarter of 2026. Typically I try to have a top 3 to top 5, but I was lucky enough to read a lot of books that I thought were really fantastic within the first quarter, so I'm not limiting it to 3 or 5. I can't choose for now, and maybe later in the year I'll hit a block and everything will suck. I'll look back at this quarter and be glad that I didn't narrow it down, because then I can be reminded of all these other good books. This is more of a recap style, so if you are looking for more in-depth thoughts, any videos I've done where I go more in-depth, I'll have them linked. Also, the books themselves, if they do sound interesting to you, I'll have all of them in a pinned comment so you can easily check them out. If you have any recommendations for me based off of the books I talk about, or 2, if you just want to shout from the rooftops about a book that you really love within this first quarter, please feel free to do that in the comments down below. I love getting recommendations from all of you. It feels like a fun way to connect, and also it's just a fun way to maybe get some recommendations that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. The books that I am going to be going through today, I am alternating between books from other genres and fantasy / sci-fi and speculative. That way we go from maybe some things that aren't necessarily as much what you guys are here for, because I know some people are mostly here for the fantasy. We'll go back and forth between that and the things that some of you are like, yeah, that's what I want to hear about. So jumping into it, we have The Vanishing Half. This is a book that I would recommend to most anyone. I thought that it was masterful in its ability to showcase human behavior, responses to traumatic events. Specifically in this story's case, you follow these 2 sisters. Their father was lynched, and they saw this. It deeply impacted them, but you see the ways that it impacted them very differently. Without it ever being really verbalized or discussed, it developed within them. It kind of manifested in different ways, and you're watching these 2 sisters who at one time felt like they were a part of each other. They go their separate ways. One of them who ends up having abuse occur in her life, another who, in her efforts to ever feel the level of unsafe that she felt as a result of what happened to her father, she starts to gravitate more and more towards any kind of thing that she feels will protect her. And in her case, she starts to gravitate towards the man that she happens to marry, the people he surrounds himself with, wealth, class, and in this case, a different race, because she is able to pass as somebody who isn't black. And you follow these 2 characters that go in these very different directions. It's somewhat generational as you also look at their children and how they're impacted, even without what happened to what would be for them, their grandfather, even without them ever knowing about this necessarily. You're just seeing the ways that these awful, awful events, and also the dehumanizing of other people, how it has these lasting impacts. And you also just see so much about society, the psychological impacts of certain events and how it plays out as you progress. It truly, especially the one sister who starts to go toward class and prestige, and in her instance, whiteness, because she views that as getting closer to something that protects her. And I say she views that because that is what I interpreted. It's not a book that tells you necessarily in very direct ways. You kind of glean this, and in doing so and having it written in this way, it sort of allows for you to understand human behavior in a different way, and it almost seems like you can empathize very differently and understand very differently than you did before. It was so well done. Obviously very, very heavy, very difficult at times, and I still think, though, if you can handle reading books that cover these serious subject matters, that I would say I recommend this to basically everyone. I thought it was phenomenal, and I know that, again, I said this earlier, I know some of you are here more so for the fantasy, but I feel like everybody should read this book. It's so well done, and I know this author has another book that I will definitely be checking out at some point, because from this book alone, I just feel like she understands people on a different level, and then also is gifted enough to put that into writing. Frankenstein, the classic. I didn't know basically anything about Frankenstein before I picked it up. My husband and I buddy read this. We did a whole in-depth discussion about this. I really liked this book. The more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed it. It very much feels like a fable. Also, I think there's this impression of classics that they are inaccessible or that you will need assistance with them, and I don't at least for Frankenstein, I didn't think that was true at all. I thought it was extremely accessible, and also it just kind of speaks to how a lot of our modern works are inspired by things that came before, but we often, I'd say in fantasy circles anyway, we tend to think of our inspirations as starting with Tolkien and then that's it. That's where it all began. And I've never really been in that camp. I recognize it's a deeply influential work. I'm not dismissing that. But there are so many other works that I feel like have been deeply impactful. We tend to think of Frankenstein as impactful to the horror genre, but I think it's impactful to a lot of other things, and Frankenstein is in itself basically a retelling from the start. So I really enjoyed getting to see all that and just learn more about actually what Frankenstein is. And if you've never read it, I highly recommend it. I thought it was really great. And if you, like me, didn't know a whole lot about it, other than that you knew Frankenstein was not the monster, but rather the character who created, quote unquote, the monster. If that was pretty much all you knew, then you were going in like me with very little information. If that's all you want to know, you can just skip ahead to the next book. But if you want to know a little bit more, it is very much examining the ways in which mankind can be filled with hubris. There's also sort of this nature versus modernity, or nature versus man. And these things that are at times clashing, but they don't have to be clashing. And you see this kind of through Frankenstein creating this being and then rejecting it, and then watching what happens when you no longer are providing another human being or another living thing with care, or when you don't allow for, in his case, you could argue a paternal role, you could argue a godlike role. So then there's questions about mankind feeling abandoned by God. And this is very rooted in its origin because it says the modern Prometheus, and you have also Paradise Lost references within this. It's a book that has many layers. It's a very deep story, even though on surface level it just seems like this fable of, oh, this man created a monster and now they are at odds with each other. It's so much more than that. Sticking with classics, I'll just go ahead and say that I also loved Wuthering Heights. This story, similar to The Vanishing Half, I think does a fantastic job of showing these cycles. In this case, it shows not only cycles of abuse, but also you are looking at, in my opinion, the way that we can assess and see the results of mistreatment, and we can identify it as horrible. But we have a really hard time at actually looking at what caused that, and also labeling those things in the same way. Meaning, the character of Heathcliff is objectively terrible. He is a terrible person. Not objectively poorly written, to be clear. He is an objectively terrible person. He is unkind, he's vindictive, he's possessive, he's abusive. He is a menace. He is a horrible person. However, he is somewhat of a representation of all the ways in which everyone treated him before. It would seem he was abandoned. He was absolutely mistreated by those around him from the time that he was a child. He was viewed as a thing. He also was mistreated because his skin color, because of his hair color, and his features in general. He was mistreated so heavily, but in a way that society has kind of deemed as just a piece of how things are. And I think that the book is saying we can all look at this and recognize it's terrible, but this is the results of all these other pieces that make society awful. And so it's inviting you to actually look through, and I would say almost like every character represents the different ways. Additionally, you are looking at very human reactions, even though it feels like the characters maybe are representing other things. They still act like people. Terrible people. Everyone is awful in this book. Everybody's annoying in this book. But I thought it was exceptionally well done. I think it, similar to Frankenstein, had so many layers to it. And I think that when we talk about classics and the ways that they're written and how approachable they are, I think there's something to the fact that there's always more to them. There's a lot of intentionality and meaning within sometimes the word choice, the color use, the way the setting is described, how the setting relates to the characters on a sentence by sentence level. There's just always more baked into the development of the story. And then simultaneously, there's an interesting story also present. So I adored both of these. I thought they were both fantastic. Switching back to fantasy, we have Gael Song. As noted, books 2 and 3 are on this list because I couldn't pick one, and I loved this trilogy. I thought it was amazing. I'm so glad I picked it up. I'm so glad I read the whole trilogy, and I really can't wait to see what else this author writes. I have since picked up the continuation, Era 2, that starts with Daughter of the Otherworld. I think that the way that she transports you to this time and place, because it is historical fantasy and it takes place in Ireland and it's drawing from Irish folklore, but also you are looking at a lot of real events within history and even real people within history. And it just genuinely feels as though you're getting actually what happened, even though, of course, it's fictional, but the setting is just so well realized, and the characters, I loved following these characters, even the one that's awful, which there is a character who is terrible in this story. Kind of a theme, I would say, with some of the books that I've enjoyed this quarter, is there's a lot of not so great people, but one of the characters is just one of your favorite characters to hate. There's also characters, I haven't said this before, but there are characters to just hate. Not love to hate, just hate. And in a good way, though. You just despise them and you can't wait for their downfall kind of characters. I couldn't get enough of this. I can't wait for what else this author does. I don't know if she'll stick to stories that are rooted in Irish mythology and history, or if she'll branch out. I don't care. Even if all she ever does is Irish history, I'll be like, give me more of it. I thought it was great. I did do an in-depth review for the first book if you are interested in hearing a little bit more. It's slightly more vague today because it's books 2 and 3, but I think that it's fantastic. Also, I gotta add, book 3 is sad. Book 3, I was pretty sure certain things would turn out a certain way, and then they didn't, and I was upset by it, but in a good way, and I can't say much else. But I want more people to read this. I think that they would really enjoy it. Next up, we have Such a Fun Age. This book felt, in some ways, like satire, but also very deeply realistic at the same time. And it kicks off when a young woman is asked to have an impromptu babysitting session with this toddler-aged girl that she is the babysitter for. She's asked to do this by this wealthy family that she's employed by because there was something that happened. The police have to come over. The family doesn't really want the little girl there when this happens, and so our main character's like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem, but I'm not exactly dressed appropriate for this because I was just hanging out with some friends, and they're like, that's completely fine, we don't mind. She's like, okay. So she takes a little girl to this nice fancy grocery store, just kind of trying to walk around and entertain her in the meantime. The little girl is from a white family. The young woman is a young black woman, and some people have decided, especially because she's not dressed necessarily in babysitter type clothes, that this looks suspicious. They don't think that's her kid. They kind of think she looks like maybe she kidnapped the little girl, and somebody records this because they're like, hey, this is messed up, and they record it in the kind of way that you expect. We've all seen those kinds of videos. Somebody's recording something and they post it and they're like, look at this, how terrible this place is, or look how terrible this person is. So it's one of those sorts of incidents that kicks everything off. So that's the catalyst for the rest of the book. She doesn't want to do anything with this information. She just wants to be left alone. She doesn't want the video to get out there. She just wants to continue living her life. She just wants to try to enjoy whatever it is she is looking for. She's a young woman. She doesn't really know what she wants for her future. Everybody's trying to pull her in a bunch of different directions. And I noted when I talked about this in a wrap-up recently that a lot of it has to do with exceptionalism, but the additional pressures to be more when it feels as though people can't just look at you as a person, but they look at you as a representation of an entire group of people. And our main character, she doesn't really want that responsibility. She doesn't really want that burden. She just wants to live her life however she chooses. She wants to navigate it at however fast or slow a pace she decides. But everybody seems to have an idea of how she should live her life. And the woman that she babysits for, the mom of the toddler, is also a perspective in the story. She is insane and so messy and entertaining, but also her actions have consequences and they impact the other character, and she's crazy and so cringy. She is the character that I feel like is both extremely realistic and also so absurd that it feels like satire, but also satire is commenting on realness. So there's that also. But she's just, I mean, I hesitate to say she's the worst, because she's not murdering people or something, but her complete lack of awareness or holding herself in any way to account. I mean, she's just, everything is about her and how she is perceived and how people receive what she says and does. She's just insufferable, but so realistic. And it was kind of painful almost, but in a very entertaining way. I really thoroughly enjoyed this book a lot. A lot of the ones I've mentioned are a little heavier, or in Gail Song's case, it's a little more, not quite epic fantasy, but it's a little bit more of a commitment. This one's probably, of all of the ones today, except for maybe like Velocity Weapon, the most fun. And I mean, it's got some serious subject, of course, some content within it that's serious and important, but you're just like, man, this lady, for a lot of the book. So I did like this one. It was, I was quite thoroughly entertained throughout. Next up, we have Legacy of Brightwash, returning to the heavier and bleak and it's just gut punch after gut punch of a story. This book kicks off with a man who is essentially like an enforcer, detective type within his society. It's more steampunk fantasy. And he discovers the body of this young child, and it would seem that this child has been mutilated. He doesn't really know who they were, what happened to them, but he does want to try to bring justice to them and get to the bottom of what happened. And there is a number that is tattooed onto this body that would indicate that it has something to do with this prison system within their society that our character's own son is within, because his son refused to register for something within their society. And he obviously is very concerned for his son. He begs his son to basically just do whatever he has to get out of the prison, because his son is being beaten by probably some people that are in charge, but also other inmates. He's very unsafe. But his son refuses. He does not want to back down. He has his principles. There's a very, very difficult relationship between these two characters. And then there's a lot more beyond that. You get kind of into politics and corruption. You also have a lot of internal reflection, interrogating what you've been told, what you believe when you were younger, and breaking out of that and seeing reality for what it is, and even being complicit in certain things within society. It's a pretty heavy book, and it was fantastic. Also, the setting is very different from a lot of what we're accustomed to in fantasy. I thought it was great. It was great. And the second one is out, but the third one at the time is not out. But I can't wait until there's more to this, because I thought it was phenomenal. I mentioned Velocity Weapon. That one we'll wrap it up with, but one more that was not fantasy would be Monday's Not Coming. This story follows a young girl whose best friend, it would seem, is missing, but nobody else seems concerned. Her best friend's mom is like, no, she's fine, but she doesn't seem home. She keeps hearing from the best friend's sister that, no, she's with this family member, no, she's here. The friend isn't showing up to school. Nobody seems to know where she's at right now, and our main character is beside herself with worry. She keeps trying to explain to the adults, I think something is wrong. I don't know where she is. I think we need to help. I think we need to call somebody. And everyone's like, honey, there's nothing we can do. I'm sure she's fine. Didn't your friend say she's with her father, or isn't she with her grandma? And they just keep getting these conflicting stories, and the whole book, you are filled with this looming sense of dread, wondering what happened to this young girl. It is also a very heavy book. A book that when I finished, you just feel a lot of things when you finish the book. Sadness, frustration, rage, and I think that the book depicts that very well. It's also a difficult book to read as an adult, I think, meaning you, as an adult, are so upset for this child and her friend, because you're like, oh, we're the ones that are supposed to be helping you, we're the ones that are supposed to be protecting you, and everyone's failing you. And how the book portrays all of that is really well done, but it is very heavy and very tragic. Heavy is apparently the key word for today, and also apparently this the thing I like this quarter, I don't know, but it was very good. It was very sad. It was very sad. But I do highly recommend this one. I think it was very well done. And then last for today, velocity weapon. This one is kind of classic sci-fi summer blockbuster sort of book. I was about to say movie. It's obviously not a movie, but it reads like one. It's very cinematic. You follow this character and her brother, and at the beginning of the story, our character wakes up after a battle, and it would seem that her body was preserved, and when she wakes up, she is alone on an enemy ship, and she is trying to make her way back to civilization, but she also is wondering if she's going to die in the middle of nowhere. And also, based off the time it would seem that her body was held in preservation for, given sci-fi things, it's probably been years and years and years. So everybody she knew and loved might be dead at this point. Then you are looking at her brother right after the battle happened, and his place within their society's politics. He is just kind of entering into the political sphere, so there's a lot of intrigue with his perspective. There's a lot of who can I trust, and also am I being made into a puppet by more powerful people? And you're looking at these two siblings, and then also there's the occasional other perspective as well, and you're wondering, are they ever going to really know the truth about each other? And how do they connect? And also, what's going on with this enemy ship? Because there's a level of sentience with the enemy ship, and so there's a lot of mysteries as you're reading the story. And I thought it was a blast. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's the first in a series. I look forward to reading the rest of the series. And I'm looking forward to also reading more things by this author, because I know they've written other sci-fi works and I've heard good things. So I'm very excited about that as well. That's it though for my best books that I picked up within this quarter. If you want to hear more in-depth thoughts beyond just what I said today, I'll have any additional videos linked, as well as the books themselves. And then, as I said at the beginning, if you have any recommendations for me based off of these books in general, or if you just kind of want to mention a book that you really liked that you picked up this first quarter, feel free to do so. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.